The honourable member for St James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill here before this honourable Parliament, and first wish to congratulate the new member for Christchurch East Central for laying his first bill and speaking and presenting, and of course the honourable member for St Michael South as well, who would have South Central, who would have supported it, the new Minister of State in the Economic Affairs Ministry. This bill, of course, is yet another fulfillment of the promises made by this new government to the people of Barbados. As the Honourable Attorney General said, when this act was passed in the Parliament of Barbados, I believe the institution of the tax clearance certificate came in 2006. We spoke vehemently against its imposition. Remember, as the Honourable Member for St Joseph said, he spoke, the Honourable Member for St Michael South East, the Honourable Prime Minister spoke, and myself, all giving very practical reasons why this should not come into the laws of Barbados. The government completely ignored it. The then Minister of Finance, in his usual arrogant and contemptuous way and theatrics, really and truly worthy of an Oscar award, said, no way, we are bringing this in. An absolutely unpractical bill, and anyone involved in business of any type, commerce, the legal profession, at any kind of reasonable level would understand why this should never have taken place. But the imposition of the tax clearance certificate, Mr. Speaker, in fact, came in, or the attempted imposition came in 2 years before. It actually came in August 2014, when the Barbados Revenue Authority Director or Commissioner, by whatever name called, sought to impose the tax clearance certificate without any legislative basis. And that public officer could only have done that, of course, on instructions from a Minister of Finance, because public servants don't act in that case on their own whim and caprice. And there was no legal basis whatsoever. I remember, sir, that I, on behalf of this great political party, made a public statement saying that if the BRA didn't remove its attempt to impose tax clearance certificate on land transactions by the end of August, certainly we would have taken the BRA to court. The Bar Association followed shortly after, I remember, by making a statement on that, to that end, because there was no legal basis whatsoever. BRA was acting ultra vires. And this is something that departments of government have to be very mindful of. They can't act on their own whim and caprice because they wake up an official one morning, where there's a minister or otherwise, and says, I want this done. It has to come before the Parliament of Barbados, which is the legislative body. And there was absolutely no legal authority at that time for any revenue authority to impose a condition on recording of conveyances or mortgages on any land transaction that you had to produce proof that you had paid any other tax, whether it be income tax, VAT, your NIS, whatever, customs duties. There was no legal basis for it. And even though we told the then Minister of Finance that, I remember approaching him in this Parliament and telling him that, he said, boy, he ain't worrying with that. And he instructed BRA to go ahead and do it. That month, sir, the land registry was at a standstill. In other words, the land registry collected very few dollars in property transfer tax that month. And the land registry collects tremendous amount of money in property transfer tax, and of course concomitant with property transfer tax is stamp duty, as you know, sir, as an attorney at law. So the Barbados Government and Revenue Authority was deprived during a whole month period of both stamp duty and vendors' property transfer tax because of the obstinance of a political administration that did not understand how the business works in the world, how commerce works, and how legal effects and ultra vires authority based on lack of financial knowledge and common sense could harm and hinder a country. Thankfully, as I said, BRA took a step back. I believe they got a legal opinion and which said that they were wrong, and so that the tax clearance certificate didn't come into effect in August 2014. But then the Minister of Finance, the then Minister of Finance, introduced the legislation for it, the amendment to the Barbados Revenue Authority Act, to bring in the tax clearance certificate. If I recall, it was in 2016. It was wrong. It was poor financial judgment. Immediately, the banking institutions of this country said, well, we're suspending mortgages. We ain't lending any money for mortgages. And as you know, Mr. Speaker, and as the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, the top businessman that he is, understands fully and support to, land transactions are one of the basis of commercial enterprise in a country. The ability to mortgage your land, to buy and sell your land. And the banks issued a statement, the Banking Association, through its then president, that they were suspending loans and mortgages based on land. So again, the economy dries up, transactions dry up, people under real problems. At that time, you would recall, Mr. Speaker, of course, the government had just the year before, 2 years before, in fact it came into effect in 2015, imposed tuition fees on Barbadians. So a Barbadian now, parent or grandparent, who wanted now to mortgage the property to get the thousands of dollars for the child now or grandchild to go to the University of the West Indies and further their education so that they could have the opportunity which should present itself to any Barbadian to go to the University of the West Indies now, had bare problems again getting a loan to send their child or grandchild to the University of the West Indies, or to any university for that matter. If your old mother or your child now come down with some health problem, which clearly the intransigeries of life could be set on any of us, and you need money now for an operation, whether locally or overseas, or for some medical services, as the Honourable Member for St. Philip North or Christchurch West would tell you, again, you're in problems. And your health now, your poor state of health not waiting on eternity. You need the money now, and you have to get now a tax clearance certificate to borrow money on your land for your mother or your child now to get medical treatment. By that time, they might be dead. I mean, it defied common sense on an administration made up of big men and big women who one would have thought had experiences in life, who would have told them that this cannot be working in the interests of the people of Barbados. We on this side well understand, Mr. Speaker, the need for a state to collect taxes. So as the Honourable Attorney General emphasized, we are all in agreement that a state must collect taxes in order for the social services and the whole country to run. And we are not on any account supporting the non-payment of taxes. The taxes are there, they must be collected, but a tax must be a reasonable tax, because if it is unreasonable, people are not going to pay it anyway. There's going to be a large percentage of default. And and it has to be reasonable. And this tax was wrong. And therefore, I am extremely humbled to be able to come today and support a parliamentary session where a bill is being presented to amend the BRA Act to remove the harsh imposition of a tax clearance certificate in order to record a conveyance, a mortgage, lease, whatever land transaction, even an assent, as the Honourable Member for Christchurch West so eloquently put forward an example. It might be a case you inherit land from your grandmother and you want to use that land to, for example, now start up a business. I mean, entrepreneurship, which is so important going forward in this country, as the Honourable Member, my colleague from St. George South, clearly recognises in his ministry, and you're hindered because you now can't show that you have been paying income taxes over a number of years. And you now want to legitimately advance in your life. So this tax, this requirement, this financial and legislative requirement was an absolute hindrance on ease of doing business in Barbados. And we fell, Mr. Speaker, from number 72 in 2009 in terms of ease of doing business globally, right down to 2006, 2007. I don't think I heard any statistics for last year, but 2006 to number 139 out of 160 countries in the world in terms of ease of doing business. And that is one of the major problems that Barbados found itself in under the last Democratic Labour Party regime. That they had ministers who talked pretty about ease in doing business and nothing was done. It became harder and harder. Imposition of all kind of licenses and certificates to do normal business. You had to take off a whole day from your work to go and pay a driver's license of $50. Nonsense. And this was the myopic thinking of an administration that, thankfully, and I commend the people of Barbados for deciding that they didn't merit one single seat in this parliament. They did not understand the harsh effects of taxation. They imposed 40 new or increased taxes on the people of this country. Some were retroactive. And the normal principle, as the tax advisors and the lawyers in here, the Honourable Attorney General, for example, would know, is that you should not have retroactive taxation. But they didn't understand that, because when they brought in the municipal solid waste tax, which together with the National Social Responsibility levy, which this Parliament would again thankfully be moving to remove later in today's parliamentary session. When they brought in the municipal solid waste tax, the then member for St. Lucie said it was not retroactive. It was brought in March of a year, 2014. It would be. The Act stated clearly in it that it was applicable from September the 1st, the previous year, 2013. But yet the then member for St. Lucie, who thankfully the people of Barbados will never have to bear at this level again, said it was not retroactive. He didn't even understand the word retroactive, and retroactivity of tax should not come in. So you know, when you had individuals of that kind of thinking in a cabinet of Barbados, you could understand why a government would be so misguided on these issues that are so fundamental to the daily lives of the people of Barbados. As was said, there was no consultation, and this is one of the problems, that the previous government went about doing things on their own thinking. the then Prime Minister said he didn't need any group of eminent persons to advise him that, and he listed some people, including the then member of St. Lucie and the member for Christchurch West Central, who thankfully is not in here anymore, as being part of the eminent persons of Barbados. So you could understand when you compare that. The former member for Christchurch West Central as among group of eminent persons. So you could understand why they got into that warped thinking. This party, on the other hand, Mr. Speaker, has been consulting people from the time we lost the government. Well, we didn't win the government in 2013, rubbing shoulders, people's assemblies, knowing what, bringing people into our consultations and into our policies. So we understand fully well what is good and right for the people and what is not good and right. And we will continue to do that. That is why we were able, the Honourable Prime Minister, just 2 weeks after coming to that office, to bring a mini budget to help in the social and economic transformation of this country after the last 10 years. The principle has been stated of no taxation without representation. I believe it was the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, Central, who spoke about that principle that has been with so-called free democracy since the 1700s. And this is a key factor, Mr. Speaker, and that is why I would want to diverse slightly, sir, with your permission, that again, when the previous government, just a couple months ago, sought to deprive people who, under the law of Barbados, had the right to vote as Commonwealth citizens residing here for 3 years, paying taxes like everybody else, it was wrong. Because you can't be paying taxes. You can't be paying taxes, living here in some cases for 30 years, like some of my constituents in Lower Carlton, for instance, and you're going to tell them that even though the law, the clear laws of Barbados say that you have the right to vote as a Commonwealth citizen, as a St. Lucian of Vincentian, that you can't vote, and you go into the CCJ, and then you're talking as the last Prime Minister said about removing the Barbados from the Caribbean Court of Justice because it has given a decision which you don't like. I mean, we are well rid, the people of Barbados, of this government. We now, sir, have, yes, the Honourable Prime Minister found that this Parliament had to increase, at least in the mini-budget, and this Parliament voted for it, to increase the highest tax band to 40%, to try to catch more people and for those who can afford to pay taxes to so pay those taxes. The 40%, though, the highest tax rate now in terms of income tax, is still below what it was under a Democratic Labour Party regime in the early 1970s, when it was 50% at the highest tax rate. The whole focus there, Mr. Speaker, is, as has been said in this debate earlier today, that people who can afford to pay should pay. And we try to ease those who are most vulnerable in society, those old persons, those mothers with 5, 6 children, those persons with disabilities. We try to ease them as much as possible from the system of taxation, and that is something I support. As the Honourable Attorney General said, and that Honourable Member pointed out ways in which the Barbados Revenue Authority can collect the valid land taxes, can seek to maximise their collection of taxes, because a state or revenue authority will never collect from everybody all the taxes due, but at least you have to try to maximise them. And that Honourable Member spoke about ways, registering judgment. There were many ways that the then government could have gone about seeking to collect, to ensure a higher tax take from those persons who should be paying taxes than by bringing instituting a tax clearance certificate. But we surely, Mr. Speaker, as a cabinet, as a parliament, will support any support that the Barbados Revenue Authority may reasonably need to be able to collect the taxes that are due to gain the human and technical resources, computer technological resources as well, to collect taxes from those who should be paying, because yes, we know that there are many people who are out of the tax net who should be paying taxes, and it can be that the burden falls on those people who are pay-as-you-earn people, the public servants of Barbados whose income tax comes out before they get their check. It has to fall as well, the tax burden, on self-employed people, and they have to understand, sir, that we all are in this together, and we all have to share equitably and fairly in the payment of taxes in this country, because it all goes towards a common good. I mean, after all, sir, the taxes that were announced last week will now cause, again, thousands of young Barbadians to go to the University of the West Indies. Again, will cause some roads to be repaired, will cause some garbage trucks to be bought, will cause some transport board buses to be purchased, will cause the accident and emergency unit to receive an input to become more efficient, as my colleague, the Honourable Member for the City, spoke so eloquently on last week, Friday. So we urge in here, we take the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to urge Barbadians to pay their fair share of taxes. And, you know, one way, Mr. Speaker, before I sit down, I would wish to reiterate what the Honourable Attorney General said in terms of taxing officers, in terms of national insurance officers, being more diligent in terms of going to self-employed persons and professionals and look at their books. They have that authority under the law. The impression I get is that they do not use that authority, that legal authority, as much as they should. Yes, the Honourable Attorney General spoke about when he was a younger lawyer and NIS came to him. I remember income tax coming to me when I was a younger lawyer too. That I don't hear about that these days. And I believe that the Barbados Revenue Authority may very well have a very fertile territory in going and examining the books of some of these beneficiaries of the fatted calf under the last government. These attorneys at law who got millions of dollars in legal fees, exorbitant legal fees, charging 6 and 8 and 10 times what they should have charged. That is fertile territory. Go and examine their books. I would like to know, as a member of this Parliament and a member of Cabinet, whether they have paid the adequate amount of taxes on their $5.8 million legal fees that they charged for Cahill, and on the $1.4 million charged to the Barbados Water Authority that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East now struggling with and doing a fine job in the 3 weeks that he's been a minister, battling.
And the VAT on it too.
And the VAT too. Because as the good businessman, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West has reminded me, the VAT too, whether they have paid the requisite amount of taxes on the 5.8, the 1.4s, the millions plus, the 750,000s, all for reading 2 documents, signing 3, attending 2 meetings. Whether they have paid their taxes, it can't be consumptuous living, as the Honourable Attorney General said, driving about Mercedes, living in big mansions and castles. They have to pay their fair share. The contractors, the construction people, although that is behind the court, the cloth of a company, whether that they're still earning a salary from the company, whether they have paid the requisite amount of taxes. whether duties have been paid on a Mercedes-Benz just before election that came into the port to go to Hyatt, that is non-existent. Nothing happening. Court injunction on it.
But yet people... 5 minutes.
Pardon, sir?
Your member has 5 more minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'll be finished before that. But still, Mercedes-Benz stopping the line car coming in without paying the requisite amount of duties for a non-existent project. Why can't we collect the taxes now, the duties on it? All of this has helped deprive Barbados of a revenue base, whereby we are now the 3rd most indebted country in the world, and where we know that we, in this party, with the help of the people of Barbados and the Lord Almighty, will bring this country back to its rightful place in CARICOM and in small developing countries and in the globe on the whole. But where, under the last 10 years of Democratic Labour Party rule, we were down at the bottom of the social and economic pit of countries, the laughing stock now of all the countries in the Caribbean and in the world. So BRA needs to do its job in terms of collecting taxes from those persons who were beneficiaries of the largest, the fatted calf, as the late Prime Minister called it, dished out by the Democratic Labour Party among its members and supporters and shareholders to the detriment of the people of Barbados. And we will certainly support BRA in that effort, not only for those persons who might have been beneficiaries of malfeasance and abuse of public office, but also for all Barbadians. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.